Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and I'm your host, Ellie. And William's here tonight, and we got a big show. And of course, trivia will be in the next hour. Halloween trivia. Boo. So, William, you have something to say about, I think, last night's show?
Yeah, last night I talked about the ground invasion because we saw, I saw on videos tanks and APCs and troops moving into Gaza, but I got that wrong. It wasn't a full invasion. It was a temporary incursion with heavy armor. And there wasn't just one, there was two, but we promised you in the past that if we make a mistake like that, we would bring it back to you as quickly as we knew. So that's what we've done right now. So that's what I had to add, Ellie.
All right, truth and news. That's it. No fakeness here. And I even have a gentleman over in Pakistan that says he really appreciates our truth and news over there in the Middle East. And the United States carried out airstrikes Thursday against Iranian proxy forces in Syria in response to a number of drone attacks. The provocations against our forces as Israel Hamas war heats up. F 15s, F 16s were reportedly involved in bombings. They said that we can report, based on senior military sources, that U.S. warplanes have carried out airstrikes in Syria against Iranian proxies. We don't know the number of strikes. Um, they were told to expect perhaps it would be uh, just those planes involved in the strikes. Um, but we don't have confirmation yet of how many warplanes. But those strikes have been carried out. And they did, I think it was Abu something that is where they struck. I'm told in response to more than a dozen strikes against U.S. bases. Uh, and the message is a clear message designed uh, by Iran and its proxy forces to stop carrying these drone attacks and these rocket attacks against the United States bases. We will not stand for it. But I'm told that the planes have safely left the area and airstrikes are complete at this time. They were targeting multiple locations inside Syria. So, William, when they have these airstrikes, it's kind of a lot of people watched Iraq to where the planes went in and they struck and struck and struck. And what the, that's pretty much what we've seen with the Iran being involved with these proxies, and we went ahead and did strikes. It's I can't remember the name of the city. It's Abu. I know it was Abu something, and I should have got the name. Yes, but I didn't. But it's very important that we don't show weakness with this weak administration. Kind of has um, I don't want to say we're weak. I want to say it's a weak administration that's very timid in this war. And they are trying not to put both feet in like they did in Ukraine. And I don't know why. But what we have now seen is um, when they had struck in Iraq and Syria and hit our bases, we went right back in. I think this is a not an administrative decision. I think this is a decision by our generals. What do you think, William? I think the generals made this decision, not.
So what happened first is we had two lily pads, military bases, one in Syria, one in Iraq. They were had a drone and missile attack, all right, and tore up the base pretty good. And then we had a bunch of people, because of the explosions, have traumatic brain injuries. They call them TBIs. So we retaliated. Now, probably what happened is CENTCOM sent to the Secretary of Defense some options, right? And the president, knowing that the area was tense already, probably allowed one of the options, because that's how these things usually go. We can go into an area and make a strike on presidential order, or we can move into an area and say if an area targets our aircraft and fires on our aircraft, then we can return fires. So those are called, what do they call those? Something conduct. Anyways, the idea is if they fire on you, you have a right to self-defense. Or the president would order you in. So the president ordered them in, and they targeted 2 areas. Now, remember, they sent missiles and drones at our bases. So we went after the location where they stored those drones and missiles. So in one case, it was a warehouse full of munitions. Another area, it was basically an ammo dump. And we went in and set off all those munitions and then left the area. So we destroyed the weapons that were targeting Americans. We didn't target hostiles that were targeting our troops. Now, if we had some troops that had ended up being killed, that may have been a completely different deal.
Yeah.
Because that would negate that type of reciprocity. So I'm sure that there's a bunch of Iranian proxies running around with some severe headaches and some traumatic brain injuries, just as the same as ours. Then we telegraphed back to Iran and said, look, you allowed your people to fire on us. We fired on them. Do you want to stop now? Do you want to play more? So Iran came to the UN, threatened the United States, but no more missiles. So is it good? Is it not good? Well, that's up to you to decide. But right now, there seems to be some peace in that region with respect to U.S. troops.
Yeah. Now, 1,000 U.S. soldiers in Niger. Now, a lot of people don't hear about Niger, and so why do we even have a war over there? And that, by a vote of 86 to 11, the Senate overwhelmingly rejected legislation Thursday night to bring home U.S. troops currently engaged in hostilities in Niger. And it should not go unnoticed that Congress never voted to send the troops to Niger in the first place. So much a senseless violence and so much death and destruction that we've got all going on, that we don't need all this going on. And another, I don't even want to say it's a proxy war, it's a civil war. Should we at least avoid wars of choice? Now, we don't even know what, there's not really a good reason to be there. Now, Haiti's got issues, and so does Niger, but we can't just keep jumping in, sending in soldiers, and causing wars of choice. Shouldn't we at least not go looking for trouble in every corner of the globe? But is it the cry of leaders of the world? With the Middle East on fire, what sense does it make to have more than 1,000 U.S. troops in Niger? Does it make any sense to station them, these troops, in a country ruled by a military junta? Does it make sense to scour the dirt back roads of Africa, droning for potential villains that will only go to different places and almost like what we see with Hamas and Hezbollah, where they just scatter And then once the U.S. troops are gone, then they just go right back in. Niger is but one of more than 20 countries the United States conducts military operations in, supposedly justified by 9/11 military force to seek out terrorist groups. So, what sense does it make to have 1,000 troops in Niger, of all places? Um, I don't know if you even want to respond to that, William, because just it's stupid to me, very
So,
frivolous. And I seen it, and I thought, yeah. I talked to my friend in Kenya, and he says, they can send two, three, 10,000 troops over here. They just go to different places, go to different parts of Africa, and then when the troops leave, they just move right back in and conduct like they've never been there before. And even with war or ground troops, or even trying to secure a location, the only thing I could see is they're protecting the embassies and our bases. What do you think, William?
so
I'm having
all of
fun
that's true.
today. It's Friday.
All of that's true. Uh, the reason why we ended up there was we were sent in to try and stabilize not the capital, but actually the border areas where Boko Haram was starting to slaughter the Christians.
Yeah.
And we had some special forces that came under fire, and we lost, I think, 4 servicemen in this exchange. And then with the special services that we had there, right,
Mm-hmm.
being weakened and not as focused as they were because they'd come under attack, then of course the government fell at the same time. So we were kind of doing 2 things at one time. We were trying to stabilize the government but not be in the capital, right? And we were trying to stabilize the hinterlands to keep Boko Haram out from slaughtering the Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Both kind of failed there, right? And we lost 4 troops. That's just the casualty. That's what happens when the U.S. military is sent in light to do complex things. Sometimes we lose our special forces. Now, when we send special forces in, we usually don't telegraph what's being done. We don't publish our successes. We don't publish our defeats.
Mm-hmm.
Special forces are there so that we can stabilize areas without causing international outcry from one way or another. But in this case, it went wrong, and now we have a major destabilization process going on in the heart of Africa, and AFRICOM is working mightily to bring this under control. So is it a good idea to be there? Is it not a good idea to be there? I'll leave that up to you guys and AFRICOM. I don't really have a way to quantify what is the absolute reason to be there, or whether it's successful or not, because frankly, there just isn't decent news out of the region.
And plus we have China moving in there too with the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's really, eventually, we're going to have to do something there. But right now, it don't seem like it's the time or the place. We have been there saving Somalia. We've been there in Niger and Yemen, Libya. I'm sorry, Libya. And even during Arab Spring, we tried to step in. But it never seems to work because there's too many different fashions of like Boko Haram, ISIS. ISIS moved over there probably about 10 years ago, if I'm right. And then not only that, but then they have their own Islamic terrorist groups throughout all of Africa, even some that took South African farmers prisoners. So eventually we're going to have to look into controlling Africa, but is it our place? William, I don't think it's really our place to step in and say, we're going to do Africa like this. But do we let China or do we let the UN step in and do something? Uh, to me, it's almost a lost cause. Africa's really open for any country to grab up and take. Yeah, that's just my opinion,
So
though.
even Germany went into North Africa, and it forced the British and United States to have to fight a war in North Africa. So since that point, there's been Americans in Africa ever since then.
Mm-hmm.
We've been stabilizing Africa the entire time since then. Now, does that just build up pressure, or does it solve problems? I don't know what to say on that, right? But
yeah.
All I do know is since the beginning of World War I or World War II, we have had a presence in Africa someplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
so is the British, and so has is the French? No.
So since we've been there, poverty has decreased, population has increased,
mm-hmm.
and complexity of thought with respect to governments has increased. Is that a success? Is that a failure? I'll just leave that up to you guys. It hasn't been as effective there as it has been other places, but has it been somewhat effective? I don't have really good numbers. I just know that those are the trends we've seen over time. And is it worth the presence that we have? I don't know.
It's the thing is as we look at what's going on in Iraq and Syria and even Africa, then you have to almost address the Middle East itself for Pakistan and Afghanistan. You guys go out. I got dogs in here. Stop. But then, we have to really address Pakistan and Afghanistan because we're looking at the same thing with them two countries. Is Pakistan basically has created Islamic terrorists out of that country, and so is Afghanistan. So and Iran. So Iran would be more of the biggest threat. But when we look at these countries, shouldn't there be like I don't want to say Egypt to take over. I don't say stop. Go. I'm sorry about that. They busted in on me. No, go. So the Middle East is going to be a factor. Africa is going to be a factor, and thank goodness Australia didn't really fall for the whole Belt and Road. So, well, as Susan said, Gaza's internet has been cut. Now that's part of war. They do that. It's the power. It's the internet. So that they can't communicate with one another. But William, it's kind of like I was saying. Are we going to keep running around and interfering in other countries to break up their little wars they have with one another? To me, it's not worth it anymore. After seeing Ukraine, I just don't see it.
Trillions to stabilize the world. If you have a strong administration, you build up your military so it's strong, so it can be deployed anywhere in the world, but you don't waste your resources around the world.
Yeah.
It's just a decision whether you're going to be strong and unpredictable or want to talk a lot and have the military come in and settle what you can't figure out.
It's like they said us picking wars, because if we look at Taiwan now, if we see we're not wanting to lose Taiwan, what about what China says? It's going to be Taiwan, then it's going to be Australia. Russia said Alaska. So we are now going to be fighting for our allies in these places that, if, it's almost like, I don't want to say Gaza. This is because it's different, um, on who owns territory or these countries. And Taiwan is, we picked this war. See, we keep picking. It's like what I was saying earlier, where we're picking wars. But Taiwan is worth fighting for because of the strait and trade routes. Um, and that's the other thing with Yemen and Oman. Uh, we have to be able to keep trade routes, or Panama. We got to keep these trade routes open so that not only just us to use it, but the rest of the globe, right?
So wars are important depending on their geographic proximity to strategically important waterways for the world, right?
Trade routes.
If an administration's weak, there's always animosities everywhere. And in these flashpoints, the contention is much greater because the value of that real estate is of so much greater value, right?
Yeah.
So if you have another nation that is expansionist and you're just trying to keep the rules of the road in place, you're going to have to exert yourself if you're a global world power. We've talked about this in global power dynamics. If you back out of an area, somebody else will fill it, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. It's a rule. It's a law of nature of combatant forces, okay? Whether they're engaged in combat or about to engage in combat. It's a natural ebb and flow. Now, we have relativists in the world that say, well, we can evolve past this war making, right? But what we've seen over history is that's not the case. It is a part of human nature to war. And you can either accept it, don't accept it, depending on your ideas there.
Yeah.
Depends on how your administration comes into being and the world you're left with. So if you want to try to talk your way through every situation, you're going to end up bleeding everywhere.
Yeah.
If you're intolerant of that sort of behavior on the world stage and are willing to impose your will upon other nations, should they cross it in a very strong manner, the world's a much more peaceful place. A lot fewer people die.
Yeah. And William, Susan made a good point, because a lot of people don't really understand. They say they cut the water, the power, and so on. There's a reason for that. They cut the internet, and not only this, but they will close down any information news source. They'll cut them off, and so they can't broadcast. This gentleman from Pakistan, he watches a lot, and he's kind of, I'm working with him on some stuff, but he said they have cut everything and banned him from giving information to the rest of the world what's coming out of Pakistan alone. So see, that's one of the first things that the head of these countries will do. They'll cut the internet. They're going to cut your TV, so you can't see any info. And then, of course, the water, the electric, to where if for like water, they're going to have to go out looking for it. Or if they're using their cell phones a lot to communicate, they will cut the internet to where they have to come out of where they're hiding to be able to communicate with others, unless they use walkie-talkies or back in the 70s, we knew it as CB radio, or what they call skip, under channels. They had regular channels on your regular CB radios, and then there's ones that's below there, and the ones below you could talk secretly. And then of course there was Skip. But William Boy, did you know I knew this much about CB radios? So anyway, the other under
Yes.
channels, the under channels,
So
they get on,
CB,
and they could. All they need is just a little. I don't know if you guys remember the whip antennas on the back of these people that did the CB radios. All they need is one good, strong antenna that can come out of the ground, and they hook a, one of the fat cables to, and then they can get the radio and they can communicate, but on the lower stations to where they can't be heard, or like I said, walkie talkies. Um, but that's how they communicate. And a lot of countries, third world countries or terrorists, will use this method. Um, I'm finding out. William, do you want to add anything before I
so
move on
CB
to something
radios
else?
had main channel
Huh?
with a carrier, and it was 4 watts, and you could transmit about 10 miles. But they also had a deal where they could suppress the carrier and just have modulation, and you could have an upper sideband and a lower sideband.
Mm-hmm.
And because you took the power that was going to the carrier and put it on the sideband, now you can transmit twice
You had the
or 3
uppers and
times
the
as
lowers
far.
channels, yes.
And if you had the good atmospheric conditions, you could skip it all over the country, sometimes into other countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
you can go far enough. It just depended, because if they had a tower, William, they could come up out of the ground and have like I'm trying to think of some of the big antennas they had. Moonrakers, right? Moonraker 4s. Those are big.
They were quarter wave. They were 10-meter quarter waves, so they were 1/4 of 10 meters.
Right, and all they needed was a big booster on their radio system. And folks, this is what they do. I mean, they're going back to the I want to say the caveman days of first technology of CB radios. And I've heard about this, where these towers are coming out of the ground and they got these great big moonrakers. And of course they could put power to their radios, add more watts, and then like my own little um, um, microphone. Then they could even have a power on their microphone to where they could get out further, and they could get out quite a ways. My dad, he was powered up. He'd key up, and boy, it would shut everybody's TVs down for 2 blocks. And he would say, "Oh yeah, this is Channel 9 emergency." And he even was heard and helped a gentleman in Arizona from Sacramento one night. I mean, that's something, because he asked the guy, "Where are you at?" And he told him the road and and the name of the freeway. And my dad was looking it up, and he finally said, "Well, where are you at? What's the name of the city?" And when he told him, he says, "You're in Arizona?" And he goes, "Yeah." He says, "Oh my goodness, I don't know if I can help you. I'm in Sacramento." Talk to him really clear. But anyway, I don't want to get into the whole CB radio thing, but that's how they communicate.
So in war, the first thing you want to do is blind your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
The second is you want to cut off communications to all of his satellite areas, so all of his defensive units.
That's it.
Then you want to cut off his means of communication. No, this is a different kind of communication. We're talking about roads, bridges, trucks, trains, anything that they can use to move material of war into an area.
And that's why they blow up the airstrips too, and so planes, the little private or military planes, can't land or take off.
So it's easier to kill an air force on the ground than it is in the air. So you surprise attack those air bases. Don't give them a chance to get the birds off the ground. You wipe out the runways, then you go after all the aircraft. before they get
Any
off the ground.
communication towers is what they label.
Yeah, we blow up all the high-powered stuff, but they can still revert back to caveman tactics with small radios, and they will, and they'll use their own codes and stuff like that, and it will take us time to break their codes, and they will be able to communicate, but it's very rudimentary and it's slow, and that's the idea of when you blind your enemy. You can't completely blind your enemy, but what you can do is take him so far out of the loop he can't keep up with your operations.
That's
and
right.
It's meant to slow down the enemy so they cannot protect themselves.
Yeah. Now, William, off subject a little bit or topic, this would be a good idea for people that are prepping or thinking that they might need to be ready. If you're worried about communications, go out and do, like I said, you can have a very small antenna that's on the car, a radio, or a very just small, what's it called, a ground plane? It's been so long, William. It's been since the 80s for me.
Those are called half-wave antennas.
But
they have
that way you could communicate, and if your family members have the same setup, you'd be able, even if you lost your phone, you'd still be able to communicate with family members that way, instead of, because walkie-talkies only go so far.
Ellie, if you have a multi-band scanner that you can listen to all the different frequencies available, and you have a small transmission capability, you can hook that to a power amplifier and use that for communications on any radio band and move around the channels in time of emergency.
Yeah.
It's illegal during peacetime, but during time of emergency.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say, even if it's illegal, if it's wartime and you've lost your phone, there's no TV, no nothing. Even the trucks that still be on the road, and they're usually on channel 19. And you could hear what's going on from the truck drivers even. I don't think they would still be on roads.
The great thing about a scanner is you can monitor all the communications going on. So you can know when things are coming your way, even that aren't a part of the CB. That's why I say wideband scanner.
Yeah.
In that way, it's better than a CB.
But until everything is knocked out, a scanner would be perfect now, so you could just hear what's going on in the local area. You'd even hear who the sheriff's department looking for home invasion in your own neighborhood. That's what that's what I listen for.
You can hear air traffic control. You can hear radio stations all over the world, their feeds. You can pick up television signals that you can then decrypt and be able to see things that are going on throughout the world. I used to take a signal generator and take two of them and run them through a transistor so I could split the frequency, and then I'd run them into a oscilloscope, and I made the oscilloscope into a television, and then I watched the launch of the Challenger aircraft when it went back up, right? When they went back to space. So if you know a little bit about electronics, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff, but if you know just a little bit of electronics, in that you get a scanner and a transmitter or a power amplifier, so you can use that thing anywhere in emergency, but you can still use it for CBs, right, during peacetime. So it just broadens the ability for you to understand what's going on in the world and be able to use the CB as well. Or you can just go the CB route and be tied to, 21 channels or 40 channels and an upper and lower sideband, which can be very crowded in an emergency.
Now, Iranian foreign minister arrived in New York, I believe yesterday. And and not only that, but let me see. I want to grab this before I forget. Um, uh,
So
uh,
he went to the United Nations and he gave a speech to the United Nations Security Council, right? And what was in that?
I can't find what I was looking for, so I'll wait till I get to it. Um, he's uh, he wanted to attend the session of the UN General Assembly, is what he's here for. Now,
Yeah.
they are in between Iran and the Arab nation. They're pretty much in charge of our UN right now. And that's one of the reasons when now Obama was pushing more for the Muslims to be able to get uh, uh, key positions in the UN because they never had before. And with his Muslim background, this is what he wanted to do on his own opinion. So now we have a UN that is saying they're more in support of Hamas than Israel because it's the Arab nation. And we got the Sunni against the Shiites. That's for thousands of years. It's a battle between the two we're never going to fix. They will go at war no matter if it's Egypt or Syria or Iraq or any of them. As long as the Arab nation and the Muslims, and we have um, I hope I say it right, Sunni and the Shiites, there's going to be a war, no matter what. Even, what gets me is we might be able to move past and take care of Hamas and Hezbollah, but there's still other countries in the Middle East that have those two cultures, and they'll never get along. They teach their kids to hate them, hate.
There's 1.6 billion with a B Muslims, and there's the two factions of the Muslim faith. One was from, I believe, the son. The other was from the wife of Muhammad. And they broke into the Shiite and the Sunni. Now, if they don't have any external enemy, they'll fight with each other endlessly. If they have an external enemy that they determine is more important than fighting each other, then they'll come together because of religious ties and fight the external enemy. That's what we're seeing right now in Gaza.
Well, it's the same over there, kind of in Ukraine, because it was the whole. There's the states that have that Putin has taken are all intermingled Ukrainians with Russians, and when you got that, you got a wonderful Muslim family in Ukraine or Russian that lives across the street from you, and you get along with them great. Do you hate them just because Ukraine has a war with Russia? And that's what's the problem is here in the United States. Just because we have a war, don't mean we need to make the civilians and the general public choose a side. And that's what's wrong right now with Israel. Do you support Hamas and Gaza, or do you support the Jews? Well, why not support the Palestinian people that are innocent and Israel? And if there's corruption anywhere, we just need to take care of it. Yeah, so I don't know. I got long-winded there. But
it's a valid position, Ellie.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the world hold that very position. I don't hold that exact position because I look at it.
I lived out in California, and this is weird. In the '60s, and I know they had the whole Black Panther movement out in Berkeley and LA and a lot of places there, and it just reminds me of it was prominently white where I lived, and it was Sacramento, and um, at third to I'm gonna say sixth, seventh grade, we had square dancing, and there was this one black kid that never got picked, and I always got stuck with him. You know, they said, "Oh no, you got to be his buddy." Well, I was like, "Why do I have to be his buddy?" Well, he lived on the same street I did, and I never had a problem with it. In fact, I went to my high school prom with a very fine African American and friends with quite a few. We didn't have a problem, but nowadays they just pinpoint if like what was going on in Ukraine. Oh, you got to choose Ukraine or you got to be choose the Russians. Well, of course, Russians are communists, so we can't be there. But us ourselves in um, the United States, we're basically have transformed into socialism. So did Putin. He's not communist. He's a hardcore core socialist person. And every time we keep picking these wars or something happens in our in our country, the first thing to do is Black Lives Matter. No, everybody matters. Everybody matters. And they have thrown aside African Americans for the LGBTQTRSZ, whatever. Um, and then get mad at a man named Trump in the middle of all of it. It's like it's got to boggle the people in America's mind that we got to be you got to support this culture or that culture, and if you don't, then you're the wrong person. And uh, and then a man named Trump comes in, and the whole United States politicians uh, lose their temper on this. So who cares? Who cares? You know, Trump is in his late 70s, William. He's only got about 10, 15 years left. Are they still, is the um, Democrat politicians, the extremists, are they still going to hate us after he dies? Because
so
go ahead.
We've had.
I know I got long-winded. I'm sorry.
So I'm just going to go back a little further, all the way back to World War I. There are a number of cultures in the world who are both dynamic and have a history of being used and abused. Mm-hmm. Now, Germany is one of those cultures, all right? They go into World War I. They're beat to pieces. Then their economy's terrible. Then they come up with this guy named Hitler, right? And he comes in and he decides that he's going to be in charge of the world. He's going to create the new Rome, right, for 1,000 years. And he expands out. People get tired of it. They fight back. Russians fight back. They're pushed back until they're bombed out and rubble again, right? So now the Germans have been used twice. Now we have this new guy out here named Klaus Schwab, and he's trying to foment the entire world because he's figured out that they can't do it by military force. They're going to have to do it by subterfuge, right? And so we see that in all of our politics. And yes, people are being forced to choose whether they're going to have their borders, they're going to have safe homes and neighborhoods, or they're just going to give everything up to the world leaders and have no autonomy whatsoever, not be able to move around as they choose, not be able to buy things they choose, not have rights over their very own bodies, not have the right to self-defense, just go back to the way it was in the 1500s and become serfs of kings and queens. Now, if that's the thing you want, that's fine. Now, Germany is perfectly willing to be destroyed over this. All right? They've been destroyed twice. They're okay with being destroyed a third time. They're going to try it anyway. That's where Klaus Schwab, the Nazi, comes from. Well, on the other side of the planet, we have another group, right, that's doing the same thing. All right? It was either Japan or it was China. Or was it Japan or it was China? doing the same thing. Dynamic societies that get tilled completely under repeatedly. So, millions die. And we all have to suffer through this on the globe, because the people in those societies like Germany and China will not stand up to their leadership and say no more.
Yeah.
Now, the rest of the globe, we can do that, right? But for whatever reason, there's 2 Asiatic countries and this German Republic, and there used to be this thing called Rome, right? But Rome's not powerful anymore. They're just a religion. So how long and how many times are you going to have your children slaughtered? They have to choose. They don't want to choose. So this is going to happen again and again. Well, they've made their way all the way to the United States. They're pushing their propaganda, communists from one side of the world, Nazis from the other side of the world. Russia is being forced to choose right now between the old communism ways they had before the fall of the Soviet Union, or the Nazi ways who tried to come in and kill all the Russians. Well, you know which side they're going to choose. And on the other side, are you going to choose the Russians who come and subjugated your country for nearly 100 years? Well, no, not really. So they're going to fight there on that battle, right?
Yeah.
Okay, flip completely around the world, and where is the battle lines being drawn? Right down the middle of the United States. You're going to be forced to choose. Because these 2 ideologies and these dynamic populations cannot moderate themselves.
Yeah.
And that's sad. And that's why there's so much animosity in Congress. You've got one side that's saying, hey, we want to be part of this world order, or that world order, and then you have a third group that has come up, they call MAGA, and that's some sort of anathema, because they say these 4 words, make America great again.
Yeah.
Now, that's not really revolutionary. Everything but that is kind of revolutionary. And the people that have worked their way into power to support these other ideologies, not the best interest of the people of the United States, and we're not the dynamic populations that go out and attack the rest of the world. We just try to keep the rules of the road smooth enough that we don't have to fight another world war for one of these other dynamic countries, right? So we're a reluctant superpower. These other 2 dynamic countries, if they become a superpower, they're going to be all over totalitarian. They're going to be terrible.
They sure are.
So we can moderate them now, or we can fight them later, but they're not going to give us a choice.
Yeah. And I do want to get in before we close out on Blinken. Now, Blinken's family are Jewish. And when he had heard the first part of this war, he flew over there. And then I heard he went back. And then he went with again. And then Joe Biden showed up. And what I'm hearing out of D.C. is Blinken is now trying to distance himself with the Biden administration due to the fact of the support of Hamas. Now, boy, I should have put this up.
So Blinken's trying to get ready for the next administration. He was part of the Obama administration. He's now been part of the Biden administration. Well, this Biden administration doesn't seem to have legs. So he's saying to himself, I got to get off this train to get on a new train, right? So who's being real busy this week, right? At the same time, Blinken's trying to distance himself and act responsible.
I think he is turned against. I think he turned against this administration. I think he doesn't agree with them.
Temporarily. only temporarily.
because he has
This
been
is what they do.
he has been friends with the Biden family for decades. Him and Garland and Mayorkas, and the
And
look
Clinton,
on his face on Air Force One when Joe Biden was talking about uh, giving aid to Palestinians, but I think there's a little more for him to open an airplane window. Really, you know?
so he has to act responsibly right now for the people because of voters, right? Because
Yeah,
we're now in an
and
election
see
season.
the
You,
thing
you
with
only get to be part of your administration for 3 years, and then on the 4th year you have to become part of the election circuit and choose which horse you're going to back.
yeah,
And right
and
now it looks like
right
it's going
now
to
what
be
he was saying was, I support Israel, and what I seen that um, um, Hamas and Hezbollah has done, not only with what Hamas has done now, but over the decades. I think he's done. I think he's really done with this administration. That's my own opinion, though.
I think he's trying to get on the next administration, which is like who's being pushed this week, who got recalled to China, who's
Yeah,
talked about removing the Second Amendment.
yeah. Well,
And at the same
Newsom,
time,
Newsom went over there, and I didn't even get to him.
administration are jumping ship.
Yeah, but and quitting. The only one sticking it out is Yellen, and she couldn't even get her facts right. I mean, she had a chart and the facts and made no sense. But I don't want to say I feel sorry for Blinken, um, but at this point, I really think he's had a rude awakening on when he made the speech. He's made one yesterday, and there's been quite a few, and all of it isn't it was big support for Israel. Now, when he went out the
I think
first
what
time,
happened is he woke up in the morning before Gaza attacked Israel, and he was a relativist, meaning he could talk his way out of anything and fix things that way.
that's right.
By nighttime, he realized he was a hunted animal.
Yeah, and the thing with Blinken though, William, is you're talking he's being hunted because nobody turns against the Democrat Party or leaves the Democrat Party and then turns on them without something happening. Now, when I started hearing how big of support he was, I was like, oh, he better send his family somewhere and warn his neighbors because when they go in, they go strong. And what about the FBI? They could raid his house. And what are they going to do? Just like they did to a few. They're going to drag him out in the middle of the night in their pajamas and throw him on the ground and try to make a fool out of him. But
that's the political reality, right?
It's childish. Red State had an article here a while back saying how childish is the Democrat Party. And I don't mean to be mean because the GOP acts the same way. But they are very, the article was saying they're more like a college scene with their fits than it is political.
So Democrats and Republicans are the same animal, except for one very different piece. Is Democrats have no problems being absolutely vicious, and Republicans just can't raise themselves to that point.
Yeah. So, I'm only a few minutes away that I got to start trivia. We'll be back on track Monday with William with his show and me with Justice for All, and then we'll bring. Of course, we'll be back to normal with the weather and lifestyle news. I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday. What, William?
I have a little video for people to watch on YouTube that kind of explains what happened with in Syria with our American forces and how the United States tends to conduct itself when our military people or our equipment is attacked. All right, and this is a really funny video. It's almost a comedy, and it's about what happened back in the 80s. All right, and it's called. It's on a site on YouTube called The Fat Electrician. Now, this
The Fat Electrician.
He used to be Special Forces, a doc in Special Forces. All right, but he happens to be working as an electrician right now. And he's a storyteller because, you know, he spent enough time in the military and you got time to work on your stories. So he did a little video called American Obliterates Half the Iranian Navy in 8 hours. And it is kind of a hoot. It's not if you're Iranian, sorry. But it gives everybody kind of an idea how the government functions and how it kind of dysfunctions as well, and how things can get out of hand and also get drugged back into hand. So, yeah, I would watch it. It's like, what do I have it? The total amount of time is like, I don't know, 27 minutes, 28 minutes, something like that. You'll really enjoy it. This guy's funny. Watch the America Obliterates Half the Iran Navy, and on the kind of thumbnail it says proportional in quotes. That's the kind of shtick of the whole thing, is proportional in war. So yeah, go to it and have a little bit of fun, learn a little bit of history, and enjoy yourself on the weekend. You're probably going to want to have some popcorn, but you better want to have something to drink because you're going to be choking on your popcorn laughing.
So
enjoy it, yeah.
Okay, so off we go, and come on back in about 5 minutes for trivia. William, you going to win trivia tonight? It's Halloween movies and music. So
I'm afraid I'm going to lose Susan. That's my greatest fear ever.
Yeah, Susan is, yeah. I think Karen takes her pin away, is why Karen.
Yeah, but Susan's an unknown quantity. You've got to be careful.
All right. Okay, so everyone have a wonderful weekend, and subscribe and share, and ring the bell if you're not getting notified, especially with our trivia. Trivia has no news. It's just a game. So come on back, and you know, we got a lot of new I revamped our endings, and tonight you'll see a few of our endings, and trying to make it better, make investigator news better. I don't know if that's a MAGA thing, but we're going to build it back better. All right, folks, you have a wonderful weekend, and come on back for some trivia. And William, thanks, and we'll see William on Monday. All right, and God bless and fill the churches.